The rain pounded relentlessly against the tinted windows of the sleek black sedan as it glided through the deserted streets of the affluent Oakwood estates. Inside, a lone figure sat in the backseat, eyes fixed on the ominous gates that loomed ahead. This was it, the moment of truth. Sarah Blackwood gripped the folder in her hands, her knuckles turning white. She had risked everything to get here, to uncover the dark secrets that lurked within the hallowed halls of the Oakwood Homeowners Association, HOA. Tonight, she would expose the corruption that had plagued this community for far too long. As the car pulled up to the gates, a sense of foreboding settled in the pit of her stomach. She knew the risks, the consequences of her actions, but the thought of the countless families who had suffered under the HOA's iron grip spurred her on. The gates creaked open and the car rolled forward, cutting through the eerie silence that blanketed the neighborhood. Sarah's heart raced as they approached the grand colonial-style clubhouse, the nerve center of the HOA's operations. Stepping out of the car, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation that lay ahead. The clubhouse loomed before her, its windows dark and imposing, as if it were a fortress guarding its darkest secrets. Sarah made her way to the massive oak doors, her footsteps echoing in the stillness of the night. Pushing them open, she stepped inside, the warmth of the lobby a stark contrast to the chill of the outside air. The lobby was deserted, save for a lone security guard seated behind the reception desk. He looked up, his eyes narrowing as he recognized her. "Ms. Blackwood," he said, his voice laced with thinly veiled contempt, "I must ask you to leave. You're not welcome here." Sarah ignored his warning, striding towards the elevator that led to the upper levels of the clubhouse. "I'm here to see the board," she said, her voice steady and determined. The guard jumped to his feet, his hand hovering over the panic button. "I'm afraid I can't allow that. You've been warned, Ms. Blackwood. Leave now, or I'll be forced to call the police." Sarah's lips curled into a humorless smile. "Go ahead," she said, pressing the button for the elevator. "I've got a few things to discuss with the board." The doors slid open and Sarah stepped inside, her gaze locked with the guards. As the elevator ascended, she could feel the tension building, the air thick with the weight of the secrets she was about to unveil. When the doors reopened, she found herself face to face with the imposing figures of the HOA board, their expressions a mix of surprise and barely contained fury. Ms. Blackwood, the board president, a stern-faced woman named Evelyn Harrington, said, her voice dripping with disdain, "I must say I'm surprised to see you here. Trespassing on private property is a serious offense, you know." Sarah stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "I'm not here to trespass, Mrs. Harrington. I'm here to expose the truth about the corruption and abuse of power that has been happening under your watch." The board members shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. Sarah could see the panic in their eyes, the realization that their carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. "I have evidence," Sarah continued, holding up the folder. "Evidence that will bring down this entire organization and everything it stands for." The tension in the room was palpable, the silence broken only by the sound of the rain pounding against the windows. Sarah knew that this was the moment of truth, the moment when the HOA's darkest secret would finally be revealed. The board members exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of Sarah's words hanging heavy in the air. Evelyn Harrington, the HOA president, was the first to speak, her voice dripping with condescension. "My dear Ms. Blackwood, I'm afraid you've bitten off more than you can chew. This evidence you claim to have," she said, her eyes narrowing, "is nothing more than the fanciful imaginings of a disgruntled homeowner." Sarah's grip tightened on the folder, her knuckles turning white. "You can't silence me, Evelyn. I know the truth, and I'm going to expose it, no matter the cost." Evelyn let out a cold, mirthless laugh. "Oh, I think you'll find that we have ways of dealing with troublemakers like you." She turned to the security guard who had followed Sarah into the room. "Remove her, and make sure she doesn't come back." The guard stepped forward, his hand reaching for Sarah's arm. But she was faster, sidestepping his grasp and moving closer to the board, her eyes blazing with defiance. "You can try to silence me, but the truth will come out. I've made copies of my evidence, and they're in the hands of a trusted ally. If anything happens to me, the entire world will know about your dirty little secrets." Evelyn's face darkened, the veneer of composure cracking for a brief moment. You made copies," she hissed, her eyes narrowing dangerously. Sarah nodded, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. "That's right. And if I don't check in with my ally by midnight tonight, those copies will be sent to the authorities, the media, everyone." "You're finished, Evelyn." The board members erupted into a flurry of hushed whispers, their expressions a mix of panic and outrage. Evelyn held up a hand, silencing them with a curt gesture. "Very well, Ms. Blackwood," she said, her voice deceptively calm. "If you insist on forcing her hand, then so be it. But I can assure you, you have no idea what you're up against." Sarah's heart raced, her adrenaline surging as she realized the gravity of her situation. She had come too far to back down now, but the threat of Evelyn's retaliation weighed heavily on her mind. "I know exactly what I'm up against," she said, her voice steady, "and I'm not afraid. You terrorized this community for far too long, and it ends tonight." Evelyn's lips curled into a chilling smile. "We'll see about that, Ms. Blackwood. You have until midnight to reconsider your position. If you do not, well, let's just say the consequences will be severe asterisk." With a nod, Evelyn gestured to the security guard who moved to escort Sarah out of the room. As she was led away, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. She knew that she had just stepped into a dangerous game, one where the stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. As the elevator doors closed, Sarah took a moment to collect her thoughts. She had come too far to back down now, but the threat of the HOA's retaliation weighed heavily on her mind. She knew that she was playing a high-stakes game, one where a single misstep could have devastating consequences. But Sarah was not one to be easily intimidated. She had spent weeks meticulously gathering her evidence, carefully building her case against the HOA, and she knew that the truth was on her side. She just had to find a way to bring it to light before the HOA could silence her forever. As the car pulled away from the clubhouse, Sarah's mind raced with a million different scenarios, each one more dire than the last. But she refused to let fear consume her. She was determined to see this through, no matter the cost. The rain continued to pound against the windows, a constant reminder of the storm that was about to break. The drive back to her apartment was a blur for Sarah, her mind racing with the events that had just unfolded. As she stepped out of the car, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Glancing around, she noticed a dark sedan parked a few houses down, its occupants obscured by the shadows. Her heart pounded in her chest as she hurried inside, locking the door behind her. Once in the safety of her apartment, Sarah sank into her chair, her hands trembling. She had known the risks, the dangers of taking on the HOA, but the weight of Evelyn's threat still weighed heavily on her. Reaching for the folder, she began to review the evidence she had so painstakingly gathered. The documents detailed a web of corruption, with the HOA board members using their power to line their own pockets and silence anyone who dared to challenge them. As she pored over the files, Sarah's determination only grew stronger. She had come too far to back down now. The lives of countless families were at stake, and she couldn't let the HOA's intimidation tactics scare her into submission. Glancing at the clock, she realized that she had less than 6 hours until her midnight deadline. With a deep breath, she reached for her phone, dialing the number of her trusted ally, a former investigative journalist named Michael. "Michael, it's Sarah," she said, her voice hushed. "I need your help. I'm in over my head, and I don't know who else to turn to." Michael's voice was calm and reassuring on the other end of the line. "What happened, Sarah? Are you all right?" Sarah quickly recounted the events at the HOA clubhouse, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and adrenaline. "They threatened me, Michael. If I don't back down by midnight, they're going to do something terrible." "Damn it, Sarah," Michael sighed. "I knew this was a dangerous game you were playing, but I never thought they'd stoop this low. All right, listen to me. You need to get out of there now. Come to my place, we'll figure out our next move." Sarah shook her head, even though she knew Michael couldn't see her. "No, I can't run, Michael. I've come too far to give up now. Those people have been terrorizing this community for years, and I'm the only one who can stop them." "Sarah, you're talking about going up against a powerful, corrupt organization. They won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to silence you. Please, for your own safety, let me help you." "I can't, Michael," Sarah said, her voice resolute. "I have to see this through, but I need your help. I need you to make sure that the evidence I have gets to the authorities, no matter what happens to me." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, and Sarah could almost hear the gears turning in Michael's mind. "All right, Sarah," he finally said. "I'll do it, but promise me you'll be careful. I don't want to have to write your obituary." Sarah felt a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I promise, Michael. Thank you." As she hung up the phone, Sarah steeled herself for the battle that lay ahead. She knew that the HOA would stop at nothing to protect their dark secrets, but she was determined to expose the truth, no matter the cost. Glancing at the clock, she realized that she had less than 4 hours until the deadline. With a deep breath, she grabbed her jacket and headed back out into the night, her mind focused on the task at hand. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the air still felt heavy with tension. As Sarah walked, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. But she refused to let fear paralyze her. She had a job to do, and she was going to see it through, no matter what. The rain had stopped, but the air was still thick with tension as Sarah made her way through the darkened streets of Oakwood Estates. Her heart raced as she approached the ominous gates of the HOA clubhouse, the sense of unease growing with every step. As she neared the entrance, she noticed a shadowy figure lurking in the shadows. Instinctively, she ducked behind a parked car, her eyes scanning the area for any sign of danger. After a few tense moments, the figure emerged, revealing itself to be a security guard making his rounds. Sarah let out a sigh of relief, but the knot of worry in her stomach refused to loosen. Steeling her nerves, she stepped out from her hiding place and pressed the intercom button at the gate. "This is Sarah Blackwood," she said, her voice calm and steady. "I need to speak with the board again." There was a brief pause, and then the gates creaked open, seemingly of their own accord. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped through, her eyes darting from side to side as she made her way towards the clubhouse. The lobby was deserted, save for the lone security guard behind the reception desk. He eyed her warily, his hand hovering near the panic button. "Ms. Blackwood," he said, his voice tinged with barely concealed hostility. "I'm surprised to see you back. I thought I made it clear that you're not welcome here." Sarah met his gaze unflinchingly. "I need to speak with the board. It's a matter of urgency." The guard hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "I'm afraid that's not possible. The board is in a private meeting and has issued strict instructions not to be disturbed." Sarah felt a surge of frustration. This can't wait. Lives are at stake. The guard's expression hardened. "I'm sorry, but my orders are clear. You need to leave, Ms. Blackwood. Now." Sarah opened her mouth to protest, but the sound of approaching footsteps cut her off. Turning, she saw Evelyn Harrington striding towards her, her eyes blazing with a cold fury. "I should have known you'd be back, Ms. Blackwood," Evelyn said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Didn't I make it clear that you're not welcome here?" Sarah stood her ground, her chin held high. "I need to speak with the board, Evelyn. There's no time to waste." Evelyn let out a mirthless laugh. "Oh, I think you'll find that time is exactly what you don't have." She glanced at the security guard. "Escort her out, and make sure she doesn't come back." The guard moved to grab Sarah's arm, but she jerked away, her eyes narrowing. "You can't stop me, Evelyn. I've got evidence that will bring this whole organization down." Evelyn's expression darkened. "Then I'm afraid you leave me no choice." She nodded to the guard. "Take her to the holding room. We'll deal with her there." The guard's grip tightened on Sarah's arm, and she felt a surge of panic. "No, you can't do this," she cried, struggling against his hold. Evelyn's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Oh, but we can, Miss Blackwood. We can do whatever we want. After all, we're the Oakwood Homeowners Association. We're the law around here." As Sarah was dragged away, she couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. She had known the risks, but she had never imagined that the HOA would stoop this low. Now, with the clock ticking and her fate hanging in the balance, she knew that she had to find a way to escape, and fast. The holding room was dark and damp, and Sarah could feel the weight of the HOA's power pressing down on her. But she refused to give in to despair. She had come too far to give up now. As the door to the holding room slammed shut, Sarah found herself enveloped in darkness, the sound of the lock clicking behind her sending a chill down her spine. She knew that she was running out of time, with the midnight deadline looming ever closer. Groping along the wall, Sarah's fingers found a light switch, and a dim, flickering bulb illuminated the small, cramped space. The room was bare, save for a rickety chair and a table in the center. It was clear that this was no ordinary holding cell. This was a place designed to intimidate and break the will of those who dared to challenge the HOA's authority. Despite the overwhelming sense of unease, Sarah refused to let fear consume her. She had come too far to give up now, and she knew that the lives of countless families were at stake. With a steely determination, she began to search the room for any means of escape. As she scanned the area, her gaze fell upon a small ventilation duct in the corner. It was a long shot, but it was the only glimmer of hope she could see. Without a moment's hesitation, she began to pry the grate off the duct, her fingers working frantically against the rusted screws. The sound of footsteps outside the door sent a jolt of adrenaline through her, and she froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She listened intently, her breath catching in her throat as the sound of a key turning in the lock echoed through the room. The door swung open, and Evelyn Harrington stepped inside, her expression one of barely contained fury. "Ms. Blackwood," she hissed, her eyes narrowing. "I see you've been making yourself at home." Sarah straightened, her chin held high. "I'm not going anywhere, Evelyn. Not until I expose the truth about your organization's corruption." Evelyn let out a cold, mirthless laugh. "Oh, my dear Ms. Blackwood, you really have no idea what you're up against, do you?" She stepped closer, her gaze boring into Sarah's. "You think you can just waltz in here and tear down everything we've built? You're sadly mistaken." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but she refused to back down. "I have evidence, Evelyn. Evidence that will bring this whole thing crashing down around you. And if anything happens to me, it'll all be released to the public." Evelyn's expression darkened, and for a brief moment, Sarah saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "That's where you're wrong, Ms. Blackwood. You've taken care of your little insurance policy. Sarah's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Evelyn's lips curled into a cruel smile. Let's just say that your trusted ally, Michael, is indisposed at the moment, and I'm afraid your little deadline is fast approaching. Sarah felt her heart drop, a wave of panic washing over her. No, you can't do this. You're monsters. Evelyn laughed, the sound echoing through the small room. Oh, we're much worse than that, my dear. We're the Oakwood Homeowners Association, and we always get what we want. With that, Evelyn turned and swept out of the room, the door slamming shut behind her. Sarah was left alone, her mind racing as she struggled to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Her only hope now was the ventilation duct, and with a renewed sense of urgency, she resumed her efforts to pry it open. As the minutes ticked by, the sound of the clock in the hallway seemed to grow louder and louder, the constant reminder of the impending deadline. Sarah knew that she was running out of time, but she refused to give up. She had come too far to let the HOA win, and she was determined to expose their dark secrets, no matter the cost. With a final desperate tug, the grate came loose, and Sarah felt a surge of hope. Climbing into the duct, she knew that she was embarking on a perilous journey, but she had no choice. The fate of her community and her own life hung in the balance. The air in the ventilation duct was stale and thick, and Sarah found herself struggling to breathe as she crawled through the cramped space. Her heart pounded in her chest, the sound of the ticking clock in the hallway echoing in her mind. As she made her way deeper into the duct, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The HOA's reach seemed to extend even here, and she knew that they were likely monitoring the entire system. The thought of being trapped, with no way out, sent a chill down her spine. Pausing for a moment, Sarah strained her ears, listening for any sign of movement or pursuit. The silence was deafening, save for the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. She knew that she couldn't afford to rest, not with the deadline looming. Summoning her courage, she pressed on, her hands and knees scraping against the rough metal of the duct. She had to find a way out, a way to reach Michael and get the evidence to the authorities before it was too late. As she rounded a corner, she caught sight of a faint light filtering in through a vent. Hope flared within her, and she quickened her pace, her focus narrowing to the task at hand. Reaching the vent, she peered through the slats, her eyes widening as she recognized her surroundings. She was in the main lobby of the clubhouse, just a few floors below the HOA boardroom. If she could make it there, she might have a chance of reaching Michael and getting the evidence out. Carefully, she began to pry the vent open, her fingers working frantically against the rusted screws. The sound of her movements echoed in the stillness, and she froze, her heart racing as she listened for any sign of detection. After what felt like an eternity, the vent cover came loose, and Sarah slowly eased it aside, her gaze darting around the lobby. It was empty, save for the lone security guard at the front desk, his attention focused on a stack of paperwork. Taking a deep breath, Sarah steeled her nerves and began to lower herself out of the vent, her feet touching down on the plush carpet with a muffled thud. She crouched low, her eyes scanning the area for any sign of danger. As she moved towards the elevators, her mind raced with 1,000 different scenarios, each one more dire than the last. She knew that she was playing a deadly game, but the thought of Michael and the countless families she was fighting for spurred her on. The elevator doors slid open with a soft ding, and Sarah stepped inside, her finger hovering over the button for the top floor. She had to reach the boardroom to confront the HOA and expose their secrets before it was too late. As the elevator ascended, Sarah felt a familiar sense of dread wash over her. She knew that the HOA would stop at nothing to silence her, and the thought of what they might have done to Michael made her stomach churn. The doors opened and Sarah stepped out, her eyes sweeping the hallway for any sign of the board members. The corridor was empty, save for a few potted plants and a series of framed artwork on the walls. Steeling her nerves, Sarah made her way towards the boardroom, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She could feel the weight of the folder in her hands, the evidence that could bring the HOA crashing down. As she reached the doors, she took a deep breath and pushed them open, her eyes widening in shock at the sight that greeted her. The boardroom was empty, save for a single figure seated at the head of the table. It was Evelyn Harrington, her expression one of cold, calculated triumph. "Welcome, Ms. Blackwood," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I've been expecting you." Sarah felt her heart drop as she stared at Evelyn, the weight of the situation bearing down on her. She had risked everything to get here, to expose the HOA's corruption, and now she found herself face to face with the very person she had sworn to take down. "Where's the board, Evelyn?" Sarah demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. Evelyn's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Oh, they're indisposed at the moment. You see, Ms. Blackwood, I've been anticipating your little visit. I must say, I'm impressed by your tenacity." Sarah's grip tightened on the folder, her knuckles turning white. "What have you done, Evelyn?" "Nothing that they didn't deserve," Evelyn replied, her voice dripping with contempt. "You see, the board members have been, *, skimming *, a little off the top for quite some time. and I simply couldn't allow that to continue. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. You? You have been arrested? Evelyn let out a cold, mirthless laugh. Arrested? Oh no, my dear, I'm afraid their fate is much more. Permanent asterisk than that. Sarah's eyes widened in horror, the realization of what Evelyn had done hitting her like a punch to the gut. You killed them. Evelyn nodded, her expression betraying no trace of remorse. They left me no choice, Miss Blackwood. They were a liability, a threat to the very foundation of the HOA. And I will not allow anything or anyone to jeopardize what we've built here. Sarah felt a wave of nausea wash over her, the gravity of the situation sinking in. She had known that the HOA was corrupt, but she had never imagined that they would stoop to such horrific depths. You're a monster, Evelyn, she spat, her voice laced with disgust. And I'm going to make sure the world knows what you've done. Evelyn's expression darkened and she rose from her seat, her eyes narrowing. I'm afraid that's not going to happen, Ms. Blackwood. You see, I've taken the liberty of neutralizing your trusted ally, Michael. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat, a wave of panic washing over her. No, you couldn't have. Evelyn's lips curled into a cruel smile. Oh, but I could. And I did. You see, Ms. Blackwood, you're the only one left standing in my way. And I simply can't allow that. Sarah's mind raced, trying to find a way out of this impossible situation. She had to get the evidence to the authorities to expose the HOA's dark secrets before it was too late. But with Evelyn standing in her way and Michael's fate unknown, she felt trapped, her options dwindling by the second. Suddenly, a thought occurred to her. If you killed the board members and Michael, then why am I still alive? She asked, her voice laced with suspicion. Evelyn chuckled, her expression one of amused condescension. Because, my dear, I want you to watch as everything you work for crumbles around you. I want you to see the look of utter despair on your face as you realize that you've lost. And then, when the clock strikes midnight, I'll make sure that you join the rest of your little merry band. Sarah felt her heart racing, the weight of Evelyn's words bearing down on her. She knew that she was running out of time, that the midnight deadline was fast approaching. And with Michael's fate unknown, she felt utterly powerless to stop the HOA's sinister plans. But she refused to give up, not when so much was at stake. With a newfound determination, she steeled her nerves and faced Evelyn, her eyes burning with defiance. You may have won the battle, Evelyn, but the war is far from over. I'll make sure that your dirty little secrets are exposed, no matter what it takes. Evelyn's expression darkened, and for a moment, Sarah saw a flash of uncertainty in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a look of cold, calculated triumph. We'll see about that, Ms. Blackwood. We'll see about that. The air in the boardroom was thick with tension as Sarah and Evelyn faced off, the weight of their confrontation hanging heavy in the silence. Sarah could feel her heart pounding in her chest, the ticking of the clock echoing in her mind as the midnight deadline loomed ever closer. Evelyn's lips curled into a cruel smile as she regarded Sarah, her eyes glinting with a chilling sense of triumph. So tell me, Ms. Blackwood, what do you plan to do now? Your precious evidence is useless, your allies are gone, and the clock is ticking. Sarah felt a surge of defiance rise within her, her grip tightening on the folder in her hands. I'm not going to let you get away with this, Evelyn. I'll find a way to expose the truth, no matter what it takes. Evelyn let out a cold, mirthless laugh. You really are a persistent one, aren't you? But I'm afraid your efforts are all for naught. The world will never know the truth about the HOA, not when I'm done with you. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, the gravity of the situation finally sinking in. Evelyn had orchestrated the downfall of the entire HOA board, and she had systematically neutralized Sarah's only ally. She was truly alone, facing off against a ruthless, power-hungry adversary who would stop at nothing to protect her empire. But Sarah refused to be cowed. She had come too far to give up now, and the thought of all the families who had suffered under the HOA's oppressive rule spurred her on. You may have won the battle, Evelyn, but the war is far from over. The truth will come out one way or another. Evelyn's expression darkened, a flicker of uncertainty passing across her face. You really have no idea what you're up against, do you, Ms. Blackwood? The Oakwood Homeowners Association is more than just a community organization. It's a well-oiled machine designed to protect the interests of the elite, and I'm the one who runs it. Sarah felt a surge of defiance rise within her. Then it's time to bring that machine crashing down. I won't rest until I've exposed your corruption, your lies, and your crimes to the world. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Sarah saw a flash of fear in her expression. You're a foolish, stubborn woman, Ms. Blackwood, and that's going to be your downfall. With a nod, Evelyn gestured to the shadows, and two burly security guards emerged, their expressions grim. Take her to holding room, Evelyn commanded, her voice dripping with venom. And make sure she doesn't get out this time. As the guards moved towards her, Sarah felt a sense of dread wash over her. But she refused to give in to despair. With a final burst of defiance, she hurled the folder at Evelyn, the papers spilling out and scattering across the floor. "You can try to silence me, Evelyn, but the truth will come out. Even if I don't make it, there are others who will take out the fight. You can't hide from justice forever." Evelyn's expression contorted with rage as she watched the papers flutter to the ground, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "Seize her," she screamed, her voice echoing through the cavernous room. The guards lunged forward, their hands closing around Sarah's arms, but she refused to go down without a fight. Twisting and thrashing, she managed to break free, her eyes darting around the room as she searched for a way to escape. As the guards closed in, Sarah caught sight of a small window at the back of the room, the glass barely visible in the dim light. Without a moment's hesitation, she turned and ran, her heart pounding in her chest as she hurtled towards the window. Evelyn's enraged shouts rang out behind her, but Sarah refused to slow down. With a final burst of energy, she hurled herself at the window, crashing through the glass and tumbling out into the night. As she fell, Sarah felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had done it. She could expose the HOA's darkest secrets, even if it cost her everything. And as the ground rushed up to meet her, she knew that her legacy would live on, a testament to the power of truth and the indomitable spirit of those who dare to challenge the corruption that lurks in the shadows.